What happens when entitlement meets untouchable power? A woman in a $5,000 suit tries to steal a seat from a girl in a simple hoodie. She calls her names, accuses her of theft, and demands she be removed. But she made one mistake. She didn't just target any passenger. She targeted the one person who could bring the entire airline to its knees. What happened next wasn't just a delay. It was a grounding, and the karma that followed was so swift and so brutal, it changed all of their lives forever. The Ether Airlines first-class international lounge at JFK's Terminal 8 was, in itself, a statement of isolation. It was an oasis of muted grays, brushed chrome, and the kind of aggressive, weaponized silence that only the very rich could afford. The loudest sound was the whisper-soft clink of a heavy crystal tumbler being placed on a marble coaster. In a secluded alcove, seated in a high-backed Eames chair facing the massive, rain-streaked windows, sat Serafina Sarah Vance. To the casual observer, she was an anomaly. She was 26, and her loungewear was not the carefully curated display of branded luxury most patrons preferred. She wore simple black joggers made of a soft, unidentifiable material, a pair of minimalist white leather sneakers, and a charcoal grey cashmere hoodie, its hood pulled partially up, though her face was visible. Her canvas tote bag, resting by her feet, was the kind one might buy at a university bookstore. The only hint of her true status was the watch on her slender wrist, a Patek Philippe Sky Moon Tourbillon, its complex face a map of the stars. But she wore it with the face turned inward, a private luxury. She was sipping not the complimentary Veuve Clicquot, but a simple bottle of Fiji water and reviewing differential equations in a battered, dog-eared physics textbook. Her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen. Ben Carter. She picked it up. "Tell me we're good, Ben," she said, her voice low and melodic. "We're good, boss," Ben's voice replied. "All business." He was already seated in the business-class cabin, 2 sections back on the same plane. CEO Harrison is on the tarmac. He's practically vibrating with excitement. The photo op with the new Vance Innovations branded Ether 787 is all set. He's been texting me every 10 minutes. I think he's more nervous than you are. Serafina sighed, closing the textbook. "I hate the photo ops. Just make sure he knows the $500 million corporate account is contingent. This flight is the test. If his first-class service is as good as he claims, we sign. If it's a mess, we stick with NetJets." "Understood." He knows. The crew has you flagged as VIP, COO invite. They're probably polishing your seat with unicorn tears as we speak. Enjoy the flight. I'll see you at the Savoy in London. "See you then." She hung up, slipping the phone into her hoodie pocket. The Ether account was a big deal. Her company, Vance Innovations, a behemoth in AI-driven green energy, had over 10,000 employees who traveled constantly. A $500 million 3-year exclusive contract would make Ether Airlines the envy of the aviation world. And all it required was one simple, perfect flight for their new billionaire client. The tranquility of the lounge was suddenly, violently disrupted. I said, "Moet, not this Prosecco. Are you people trained at all?" A woman in a painfully bright, cherry-red blazer and matching pencil skirt was berating the bartender. This was Caroline Jensen. She was in her late 40s, with a helmet of blonde hair that looked as though it could deflect small arms fire. Her face was a mask of expensive makeup and profound dissatisfaction. Her luggage, a matching set of pristine, white Louis Vuitton rollers, was positioned aggressively in the main walkway. "I am a Platinum Medallion member, flying first," she announced to the bartender, and by extension, the entire lounge. "I have a $10 million deal to close in London. I expect a certain level of service." The bartender, a young man named Alex, simply nodded. "My apologies, ma'am. We only have the Veuve Clicquot or the Dom Perignon Rosé." "Fine, just bring the Dom to my seat," she snapped. She turned and began to march toward the seating area, pulling out her phone. She was so engrossed in her own importance that she tripped over the handle of Serafina's simple canvas tote bag. Caroline stumbled, catching herself on the back of a chair. She glared down at the bag, then at Serafina, who was looking up from her book. "You should really keep your things out of the walkway," Caroline sneered. "I'm sorry," Serafina said, moving to pull the bag closer, though it was already tucked under her own chair. Caroline's eyes raked over Serafina. She saw the hoodie, the joggers, the water bottle. She didn't see the Patek Philippe, or the fact that Serafina's shoes cost more than her red blazer. She saw a young, black woman, who in her mind simply did not belong. "They're really letting anyone in here these days," Caroline muttered, loud enough for Serafina to hear. "Must be that new diversity credit card." She huffed and then continued on her way, dialing her phone. "Robert?" "Yes, it's me. This airport is a disaster." Serafina watched her go, a familiar, weary tightness in her chest. She'd been dealing with Carolines her whole life. The women who assumed her brilliance was a handout, her success an accident, and her presence a mistake. A moment later, the electronic chime sounded. Ether Airlines is pleased to announce the boarding of Flight 117 to London Heathrow. We now invite our first-class passengers, military in uniform, and families with small children to begin pre-boarding at Gate 26. Caroline Jensen snapped her phone shut, grabbed her rollers, and practically sprinted for the door, determined to be the first one on. Serafina sighed. She carefully placed her textbook in her tote, zipped it, and stood up. She stretched, popped her neck, and walked calmly toward the gate. The storm was coming. The jet bridge for Flight 117 was a sterile, carpeted tube, but for Serafina, it was a moment of peace. She loved the physics of flight, the smell of jet fuel, the sheer engineering marvel of the 300-ton machine she was about to board. She stepped through the fuselage door and was greeted by a flight attendant. "Welcome aboard, ma'am." "Hi," Serafina smiled, stepping into the cabin. The first-class cabin on the Ether 7FN7 was palatial. There were only 8 pods, each one a self-contained suite with a high-definition screen, a minibar, and a seat that reclined into a fully flat bed, complete with a door for privacy. Serafina's ticket was for 1A, the flagship seat at the very front left of the plane. It was the most private, the most desirable. She slid her tote bag into the overhead compartment, which was already half full with Caroline Jensen's white Louis Vuitton luggage. Odd, she thought. Caroline must be in 1B. She settled into the plush, leather and fabric seat, marveling at the legroom. She could stretch her 5'9" frame out completely. She pulled out her phone and a set of wired earbuds. She didn't trust Bluetooth on planes, and prepared to settle in for the 7-hour flight. A shadow fell over her. It was Caroline Jensen. She was not in 1B. She was standing in the aisle, glaring down at Serafina with a look of pure, unadulterated disbelief. "Excuse me," Caroline said, her voice dripping with condensation. Serafina looked up, pulling one earbud out. "Sorry?" I said, "Excuse me," Caroline repeated, louder. "I think you're in the wrong cabin. Economy is in the back, way in the back." Serafina blinked, confused. "I'm sorry, what? This is my seat." 1A. Caroline let out a short, barking laugh. "Oh, honey, no, this is first class. You must be new to this. This is for—" "Well, it's not for you. Now, be a dear and run along before you get in trouble." The sheer, patronizing confidence of the woman was almost impressive. "Ma'am," Serafina said, her voice remaining perfectly even. "This is my assigned seat. I don't know what the problem is, but I'm not moving." "This is the problem," Caroline snapped. Her face was beginning to turn the same shade as her blazer. "This seat is for my colleague," she lied, frantically inventing a narrative. "She's just in the restroom. You've snuck in here while no one was looking." Other first-class passengers were boarding now, an older couple and a man in a business suit. They were politely trying to ignore the unfolding drama, but their eyes were fixed on the confrontation. "Ma'am, I did not sneak anywhere," Serafina said, her patience wearing thin. "This is 1A. My boarding pass says 1A. You are holding up the line." This was the wrong thing to say. Caroline's eyes bulged. "How dare you! You don't get to talk to me like that!" She turned and saw a young flight attendant, Michael Rodriguez, approaching with a tray of pre-departure drinks. "You!" Caroline barked, pointing at him. "This person is refusing to move. She's in a first-class seat, and she's probably using a fake ticket. Get her out of here." Michael, who was only 23 and on his 3rd month flying international, froze. I'm sorry, Mum." "Are you deaf? This girl is an imposter," Caroline shrieked. "She doesn't belong here. Look at her. She's wearing a hoodie." Michael looked at Serafina, then at Caroline, his face a mask of professional panic. "Mum," he said, directing his attention to Caroline, "this is a full flight. Can I please see your boarding pass, just so I can find your correct seat?" "My seat is with my luggage." Caroline gestured to the overhead bin. "This girl is in my friend's seat. I am Caroline Jensen, Platinum Medallion. I am this close to buying a stake in this airline." Serafina almost snorted. That was an interesting lie. "Ma'am, I must insist. Let me see your boarding pass," Michael said, his voice a little firmer. With a dramatic sigh, Caroline fished her phone from her purse and shoved the screen in his face. Michael scanned it. "Ah," he said, his face relaxing slightly. "Thank you, Mrs. Jensen. I see you're in 3B. That's a wonderful seat, just 2 rows back, by the window." There was a beat of pure, unadulterated silence. Caroline stared at him. "What did you say?" "Your seat is 3B, Ma'am," Michael said, trying to be helpful. "It's right this way." Caroline looked from Michael to Serafina. She looked at the luxurious pod of 1A. She looked at the slightly less luxurious, but still first-class pod of 3B. And in that moment, something in her brain simply snapped. It wasn't about the seat. It was about the audacity. It was about this young, black woman, dressed in street clothes, sitting in the seat that Caroline felt she deserved, even if she hadn't paid for it. It was about the perceived inversion of the natural order of things. "No," Caroline said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Ma'am?" Michael asked. "No, I'm not going to 3B. This is ridiculous. I am not sitting behind her." And then she did something that escalated the situation from a minor disagreement to a federal offense. She reached down, grabbed Serafina's canvas tote bag, which Sarah had since placed on the adjacent seat, 1B, and threw it into the aisle. "Hey!" Serafina yelped, standing up as her bag, containing her laptop, her textbook, and her passport, hit the carpet with a thud. Caroline Jensen then plopped herself down in seat 1B, crossed her legs, and put her feet up on the ottoman of Serafina's seat, 1A. "I'm not moving," Caroline declared, pulling out a copy of Vogue. "You deal with her. Get her out of here, and bring me my dom." The cabin was frozen. The other passengers stared, wide-eyed. Michael, the flight attendant, looked like he was about to faint. Serafina Vance, however, was no longer weary. She was furious. She stood in the small space in front of her pod, vibrating with a cold, clear anger. She looked down at her bag in the aisle. She looked at Caroline's designer-clammed feet, which were currently resting on the ottoman she was supposed to be sleeping on. "Mom," Serafina said, and her voice had dropped several degrees. It was no longer melodic. It was the voice she used when a multi-million-dollar acquisition was going sideways. "You have just touched my personal property. You are in a seat that is not yours, and you have put your feet on my seat. Move. Now." Caroline didn't even look up from her magazine. "I'm not speaking to you. Flight attendant, are you going to do your job or not? This thug is threatening me." "She's not a thug," Michael stammered, his professionalism crumbling. "Mom, you can't do this. You just assaulted a passenger." "I did no such thing. I tidied. She's probably got drugs in that ratty bag anyway. You should search it." That was the line, the final, uncrossable line. Accusing a black woman of carrying drugs in front of an entire first-class cabin was not just an insult. It was a weapon. And Caroline had just fired it, point blank. "Michael," Serafina said, never taking her eyes off Caroline. "Call your purser, and then call the gate. We're going to need Port Authority." "Port Authority?" Michael squeaked. "Oh, look," Caroline cackled, finally lowering her magazine. "Little Miss Hoodie is trying to give orders. That's adorable. You're going to be the one in handcuffs, dear." "Michael, now," Serafina commanded. Michael fumbled for his intercom. "Margaret, I need you in 1A. We have a situation." A moment later, Margaret Bishop, the senior purser, arrived. She was a woman in her late 50s with a crisp uniform and a silver-grey bun that was as tight as her expression. She had seen everything in her 30 years of flying. She took in the scene in half a second. The red-faced woman in 1B, the young, visibly angry woman in the aisle, the tossed bag, and the terrified junior FA. "What?" Margaret said, her voice a calm, powerful alto. "Is the disturbance?" "Margaret, thank God," Michael said, rushing to her. "This woman, Mrs. Jensen, her seat is 3B, but she sat in 1B, and she threw this passenger's, Ms. Vance's, bag into the aisle. And she accused me of carrying drugs," Serafina finished, her voice flat. "After she told me I didn't belong in this cabin, and after she refused to move from a seat that is not hers." Margaret's eyes, sharp as ice chips, landed on Caroline. Caroline, for the first time, looked slightly less confident. Margaret Bishop was not a 23-year-old boy to be bullied. "Ma'am," Margaret said to Caroline, "my name is Margaret Bishop, and I am the purser in charge of this flight. You are currently seated in 1B. Is this the seat on your boarding pass?" It doesn't matter," Caroline blustered. "This other passenger was harassing me, and That is a no, then," Margaret cut her off. "Ma'am, you have been asked by a flight attendant to move, and you refused. You have assaulted another passenger by throwing her luggage. You are now in violation of federal aviation regulations. I am not asking you, I am telling you. Take your belongings and move to seat 3B, or you will be removed from this aircraft." The threat hung in the air. Removed? Caroline looked around. The other passengers were filming her on their phones. She saw her own red, blotchy face reflected in the screen of the man across the aisle. Humiliation was warring with her entitlement. I am a platinum member," she tried, one last time. "My husband is Robert Jensen, of Jensen Manufacturing. He's a lawyer. I'll have your job for this." Margaret Bishop did not blink. "I'll take that risk." She turned to Serafina. "Ma'am, I am profoundly sorry. This is not the standard of Ether Airlines. So we can put this to rest and have this woman removed. May I please just privately scan your boarding pass to verify you for the gate agent's report?" This was the professional de-escalation Serafina had been waiting for. She nodded, appreciating Margaret's cool head. "Of course," Serafina said. She pulled out her phone, opened her Ether app, and handed it to Margaret. Margaret pulled out her own airline-issued scanner. She scanned the QR code. The scanner beeped. Margaret looked at the screen. She looked at Serafina. She looked at the screen again. Her blood turned to ice. She'd seen VIP tags before. She'd seen concierge key and global services and million miler. The tag on Serafina's ticket was one she had never seen. It was a simple, terrifying three-word string. Vance, S, seat, 1A status, VIP, CEO invite. Margaret Bishop suddenly understood. This wasn't just a passenger. This was the passenger. The one from the all-hands briefing. The Vance Innovations C-suite. The $500 million account. And Caroline Jensen had just accused her of carrying drugs. Margaret's professionalism was now a mask for white-hot, sheer terror. "Mrs. Jensen," Margaret said, her voice now dangerously low and formal. "You have exactly 10 seconds to move before I call the captain and have the gate reopened." Caroline, sensing she had finally, truly lost, was about to stand. She was defeated, but her mouth made one last, fatal mistake. "Fine!" she spat, grabbing her purse. "I'll move, but I'm filing a complaint against all of you. You can't even protect your real customers from her." That was it. Serafina had been willing to let it go, to let the woman move to 3B and stew in her own bile for 7 hours. But not anymore. Her. Serafina held up a single, calm hand to Margaret. "Stop." Margaret froze. Serafina pulled out her own phone. She didn't call security. She didn't call the police. She sent a single text message. To Ben Carter. Message: "Ben, we have a code red. Ether 117. Passenger in 1B. Caroline Jensen. Verbal assault, physical intimidation, and a racial slur. I'm not safe. I'm not comfortable. Suspend the deal. S." She hit send. Seconds later, the entire world changed. 2 cabins back, in the relative quiet of business class seat 12D, Ben Carter's phone vibrated with a unique, high-priority buzz. He had been reviewing the London logistics, half asleep. He saw the text. He was suddenly, terrifyingly, awake. Code Red. In the Vance Innovations Operations Manual, Code Red was not a drill. It signified an immediate, credible threat to the CEO's safety, security, or the company's integrity. It was the break glass protocol, and it had never been used for airline service. Ben Carter didn't hesitate. He didn't call the flight attendants. He didn't call the purser. He had one number in his favorites, reserved for exactly this kind of 5-alarm fire. He hit dial on James Harrison. Simultaneously, on the tarmac, James Harrison, the CEO of Ether Airlines, was on the best high of his life. He was standing on a specially rolled-out red carpet on the tarmac, right under the wing of the 777. Beside him was a podium, a giant pair of scissors, and a 10-foot-wide banner that read, "Either Airlines and Vance Innovations, flying into a greener future." A small, curated group of aviation journalists and PR staff were snapping photos. "It's a landmark day, Mr. Harrison," said a reporter from Airways magazine. "The Vance account is the biggest corporate deal of the decade." It is. Harrison beamed, straightening his $3,000 Armani tie. "It's a testament to our shared values. Ms. Vance is a visionary, and we're just thrilled to have her on board. Literally. She's on this very flight, testing out our flagship service." His personal phone, the one with the private number, began to ring. He saw the name. Ben Carter. Vance Koss. "Ah, this must be her assistant," Harrison said to the press, winking. "Probably calling to tell me how much she loves the champagne." He answered, his voice booming. "Ben, my boy, tell me the good news. How is she find Mr. Harrison?" Ben Carter's voice was not friendly. It was a flat, cold Arctic sheet of ice. Harrison's smile evaporated. "Ben, what's wrong?" "Mr. Harrison, as of 3 seconds ago, Serafina Vance has invoked a code-red security protocol. She is currently being verbally assaulted, racially harassed, and physically intimidated by another passenger, one Caroline Jensen, in the first-class cabin. She is not safe." Harrison's blood, which had been buzzing with champagne and victory, turned to sludge. "What? Harassed? Our crew is handling it, right?" "Mr. Harrison," Ben's voice was sharp as a diamond cutter. "Your crew failed. Serafina Vance is not comfortable. And per the CEO's personal directive, the $500 million Vance Ether partnership is hereby suspended, effective immediately. Do not let that plane take off." The line clicked dead. James Harrison stared at his phone. The banner, the reporters, the plane, $500 million. "James, is everything all right?" the PR rep asked. Harrison didn't answer. He dropped his phone onto the tarmac, where it skittered and the screen cracked. He tore off his Ether-branded lapel pin and threw it. And then he began to run. He sprinted, his expensive Italian leather shoes slapping the wet tarmac, past the podium, past the stunned reporters, and up the metal stairs to the jet bridge, shoving a gate agent out of the way. "Do not close that door!" he screamed, his voice echoing in the tunnel. "Hold the flight! Hold the damn flight!" Simultaneously, in the cabin. Caroline Jensen was just starting to feel the sweet, petty thrill of victory. She had finally been forced to 3B, but not before lodging a very loud, very public complaint against Margaret and Michael. "You will all be hearing from my lawyers," she had shouted, as she slammed her white roller bag into the overhead bin above 3B. "This is the worst service I have ever received." Serafina had finally sat back down in 1A. Her bag was at her feet. She was pale, her hands gripping the armrests. Margaret Bishop was kneeling beside her, offering water, apologies, and federal incident report forms. "Miss Vance, I don't know what to say. We will have Mrs. Jensen met by authorities in London, I promise you." "It's too late for that, Margaret," Serafina said quietly. "Ma'am?" "Captain Reed, on the line, ma'am," Michael whispered, holding out the cabin phone to Margaret. Margaret took it. "This is Bishop." She listened. Her face went from concerned to ashen. "Yes, Captain, Yes, I understand. Right now? The whole flight?" She hung up the phone, looking utterly shell-shocked. Just then, the main cabin door, which had been sealed and was moments from being locked, burst open with a pneumatic hiss. James Harrison, CEO of Ether Airlines, stormed into the first-class cabin. His hair was plastered to his forehead with sweat and rain. His tie was undone. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. He scanned the cabin, his eyes wild. He saw Margaret, Michael, and the older couple. And then he saw Serafina Vance, sitting in 1A, looking at him with a gaze of pure, cold disappointment. He ignored everyone else. He rushed to her seat, stumbling over a stray champagne flute. "Miss Vance, Serafina, oh my God, are you all right?" I just heard. I am, on behalf of Ether Airlines, I am mortified." This was the moment. The seconds later beat. In the back, in 3B, Caroline Jensen's jaw dropped. She recognized the man from the cover of Ether In-Flight magazine, the CEO, James Harrison, and he was groveling to the girl in the hoodie. "Mr. Harrison," Serafina said, her voice cutting through the CEO's panic. "Your customer, Caroline Jensen in 3B, assaulted me. She accused me of being a drug mule. She told me I didn't belong here. Your staff," she motioned to Margaret, "was professional, but this situation is untenable." Harrison's head snapped around. He stared down the aisle at Caroline Jensen. Caroline had never known true fear. Not like this. "You," Harrison said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. He pointed a trembling finger at her. You did this." He turned to Margaret. "Where are the Port Authority officers I called from the jet bridge?" As if on cue, 3 large Port Authority police officers in full, serious gear clomped onto the plane. "Mr. Harrison?" the lead officer asked. "You reported a passenger interfering with a flight crew?" Harrison pointed, his arm shaking. "Her. Seat 3B. She assaulted another passenger. She is a security risk. I want her off this plane, now." The cabin fell into a dead, shocked silence. The only sound was the click of the officer's radio and the quiet sobbing that began to emanate from seat 3B. No, it was a mistake," Caroline wailed as the officers advanced on her row. "It was a misunderstanding. I have a ticket. I'm a platinum member." "Ma'am, you need to come with us," the officer said, his voice devoid of any emotion. "Grab your carry-on bags. You are being removed from this flight." The humiliation was absolute. Every passenger in first and business class was now standing, their phones out, recording the scene. The Platinum Medallion member, the woman in the red power suit, was being unceremoniously escorted off a plane by armed police. She was hysterical. "But my meeting, my $10 million deal, you can't do this." As she was being dragged, red-faced and weeping, past the first-class cabin, she saw Serafina. Serafina was just watching her, her expression not triumphant, but simply exhausted. "You!" Caroline shrieked, lunging or trying to, against the officer's grip. You bitch! You did this to me! You ruined everything!" "Ma'am, that's enough," the officer said, pushing her firmly toward the exit. They got her to the door. She was still screaming, "My husband is a lawyer! You'll all be fired!" And then she was gone, her voice fading down the jet bridge. James Harrison stood in the middle of the cabin, breathing heavily, trying to fix his tie. He looked at Serafina, his face a mess of panic and forced smiles. "Miss Vance, she's gone. The trash is removed. We can close the door. We'll get you to London. We'll comp your flight, obviously. We'll give you 1,000,000 miles. Anything. Please, please don't cancel the deal." He looked pathetic, a titan of industry, reduced to a begging, sweaty mess. Serafina looked at him. She looked at Margaret, who looked like she was about to cry from the stress. She looked at Michael, who had his hand over his mouth. She looked at the other passengers, who were now staring at her. The quiet girl in the hoodie, who could apparently summon CEOs and police at will. The entire plane was compromised. The entire experience was tainted. This wasn't just bad service. This was a complete, systemic failure. "Mr. Harrison," Serafina said, standing up. She picked up her canvas tote bag. "The deal is suspended," she said, her voice clear and final. "My team will not fly on an airline where this is even a remote possibility." But, what can I do?" Harrison pleaded. "I'll fire the crew. I'll fire everyone." "You'll do no such thing," Serafina snapped. "Margaret and Michael were the only competent people here. The problem is you. The problem is a culture that allows a woman like that to feel so entitled that she can assault someone. The problem is that I am still shaking." She slung her bag over her shoulder. "But this flight is full," she said, looking past him at the other passengers. "These people need to get to London. It's not their fault." She started walking toward the door. "Miss Vance?" "Where are you going?" Harrison asked, panicked, following her. "I'm not flying," Serafina said. "I will not set foot on this plane. Ben is arranging my private transport. A Gulfstream G700 will be fueled at Teterboro within the hour." Harrison's face fell. He knew what this meant. If she deplanned, the story would be everywhere. Vance CEO refuses to fly Ether. It would be a corporate disaster. "Wait," he commanded. If you won't fly, Miss Vance, no one will." He turned and strode to the cockpit. The door opened. Captain David Reed, a silver-haired man with a grim expression, met him. "Captain," Harrison ordered, "this flight is grounded." The captain's eyes went wide. "James, what? We have 300 souls on board. We're on a schedule. We can't just—" "We can, and we are," Harrison said, his voice ruthless. He was in damage control mode now, and the damage was catastrophic. "A service failure has compromised the integrity of this flight. I am grounding Ether 117. Deplane everyone, rebook them, full refunds, vouchers, hotel rooms. I don't care what it costs. This flight is cancelled." He stepped back into the cabin, picking up the intercom. His voice boomed through the entire 777. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is James Harrison, the CEO of Ether Airlines, speaking. Due to an unforeseen and unacceptable security and service failure, this flight, Ether 117 to London, is now indefinitely grounded. We are cancelling this service. We will be deplaning all passengers at the gate, effective immediately. We will—" A collective, massive groan erupted from the entire aircraft. The chaos was immediate. People in economy started to stand up, shouting. This was the real grounding. It wasn't just a delay. It was a $2 million logistical nightmare. A cancelled 777 flight, 300 rebookings, international slot loss, crew reassignment, all because Caroline Jensen couldn't stand to see a black woman in seat 1A. Amid the chaos, Serafina Vance, the only calm person on the plane, simply walked off, past the stunned gate agents, and into the terminal. She pulled out her phone and made one call. "Ben," she said. "The Ether test is over. They failed." Caroline Jensen was not arrested. Interfering with a flight crew is a federal offense, but James Harrison, in a desperate bid to keep the exact details of the incident from becoming a federal report, had simply requested she be removed for trespassing. She was, however, detained in the beige windowless Port Authority holding room near the gate for 2 hours. She was a wreck. Her $400 mascara was streaked down her face. Her blonde helmet of hair was, for the first time in its life, mussed. She had made one phone call to her husband, Robert Jensen. It did not go well. And this black girl, this thug in a hoodie, she set me up, Caroline sobbed into the receiver. "And the CEO, Robert, James Harrison, he came on the plane and he took her side." There was a long, cold silence on the other end of the line. Robert, are you there? You have to sue them. You have to sue Ether Airlines and that girl." "Caroline," Robert Jensen's voice was hollow. What did you say the girl's name was? Did you get a name?" "I don't know. They called her Ms. Vance, I think." "Yes, Vance. Like a Serafina Vance," Robert whispered, and his voice was full of a dawning apocalyptic horror. "Yes. How did you know? Who is she?" "Caroline," Robert said, and she could hear him sitting down heavily. You idiot. You monumental, catastrophic idiot." "What? Robert, don't you talk to me like that. I'm the victim." "You're not the victim, Caroline," He roared, and she flinched. Serafina Vance is Vance Innovations. She's the 26-year-old AI billionaire, the one on the cover of Forbes, Time and Wired last month. The woman changing the world. Caroline's sobs hitched. Billionaire, but the hoodie. Yes, the hoodie. That's her brand. And James Harrison. He was on that tarmac to sign a $500 million corporate contract with her. The contract that would have made Ether Airlines our new primary litigation client. The deal I have been working on for 6 months. A cold, sick feeling was replacing Caroline's anger. Oh no. Oh yes, Robert seethed. But that's not even the worst part, is it? What? What worst part? Jensen Manufacturing, Robert said, his voice dropping again. Your family's company. The one you're supposed to be saving. The $10 million deal you're flying to London for. Who is it with, Caroline? It's a new clean energy consortium. A European partner. A European partner, Caroline? Or a subsidiary? A subsidiary of who? Who, Caroline? She knew. She suddenly, horribly knew. The deal wasn't with a random EU company. The trade show was just a formality. The real meeting, the one she'd been bragging about, was with the acquisitions team for the largest green tech fund in the world. Vance Innovations, she whispered. Vance Innovations, Robert screamed. You weren't flying to London to close a $10 million deal. You were flying to London to beg Serafina Vance's interns to buy your family's failing parts business, and you just called their CEO a drug mule and got her flight cancelled. The phone clicked. Robert had hung up on her. An officer opened the door. Okay, Mrs. Jensen, you're free to go. Ether Airlines has banned you for life, and you've been issued a citation for disorderly conduct. Have a nice night. Caroline Jensen stumbled out into the main terminal. Flight 117 was gone from the board, replaced with a red cancelled. The terminal was a zoo, filled with hundreds of angry, yelling passengers from the flight she had grounded. They were all in line, trying to get rebooked, screaming at the gate agents. And they were all staring at her. The woman in the red blazer. The woman who had ruined all of their nights. She had lost her flight. She had lost her $10 million deal. She had lost her husband's biggest client. And she was stranded at JFK. The first wave of hard karma had just hit. The rest was coming. The story exploded. By the time Serafina's G700 was over the Atlantic, Ether 117 was the #1 trending topic on Twitter. The passengers with the A-phones had uploaded their videos, and the internet, in its infinite, merciless wisdom, had stitched them together. There was Caroline screaming, "She's probably got drugs!" There was James Harrison sprinting up the jet bridge. There was Caroline weeping, being dragged off the plane by Port Authority. The story was Billionaire in a Hoodie versus entitled Karen. It was, to put it mildly, a bloodbath for Ether Airlines. Their stock, ticker AETH, dropped 18% in pre-market trading. James Harrison's grounding of the flight, meant to be a show of solidarity with Vance, was spun as utter chaos at Ether, and CEO grounds plane Strands 300 over VIP spat. But the real devastating karma was reserved for Caroline Jensen. She finally got back to her Connecticut mansion 2 days later, after a humiliating 22-hour journey flying economy on a budget airline via Iceland. Her husband, Robert, was not there. His car was gone. His closet was empty. On the kitchen's marble island was a single manila envelope. It contained divorce papers. The cause was listed as irreconcilable differences. But Robert had, in a moment of sheer, beautiful spite, taken a red pen and written in the margin, "She cost me the Ether account." Caroline sank to the floor, stunned, but the worst was yet to come. The doorbell rang. It was a courier. He handed her another envelope. this one heavier, embossed with the Jensen Manufacturing logo. It was a letter from her father-in-law, Arthur Jensen Sr., the company's patriarch and chairman. She tore it open. It was not a letter of support. "My dear Caroline, I am writing to inform you that, as of 9 a.m. this morning, the Board of Directors for Jensen Manufacturing has voted unanimously to terminate your employment as VP of Sales for cause. Your cause, to be specific, is the gross and willful destruction of company value. Same day, 9 a.m., Board of Directors for Jensen Manufacturing. Termination with cause." The Vance Innovations contract was not, as you so flippantly called it, a $10 million deal. It was a $150 million acquisition and bailout package that would have saved this company, my father's company, from the bankruptcy we have been narrowly avoiding for 3 years. Your actions at JFK on November 17th were not just an embarrassment, they were a direct and catastrophic sabotage of our company's last and only lifeline. Mr. Ben Carter, Ms. Vance's chief of staff, called me personally this morning. He informed me that Ms. Vance is not interested in acquiring a company whose leadership reflects such profound and archaic bigotry. You have not just lost a sale. You have bankrupted us. Your company credit cards have been cancelled. Your severance is 0. Your access to the Jensen Family Trust, per the Moral Turpitude Clause, is hereby suspended indefinitely. Security is on its way to collect the company car. Do not contact me, or Robert, again. Sincerely, Arthur Jensen, Senior Chairman, Jensen Manufacturing, in receivership. Caroline dropped the letter. She was fired. Her husband had left her. Her old money family-in-law had disowned her and cut her off. The company was bankrupt. She was left alone in a house she could no longer afford, with nothing but a cancelled flight, a disorderly conduct ticket, and a bright red blazer that suddenly seemed to mock her. She had tried to steal a seat from a woman she thought had nothing. In return, she had lost everything. 1 week later, the London rain was a cold, grey sheet against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Vance Innovations headquarters. Inside, it was silent, save for the whisper of a smart marker on a glass board. Serafina Vance, back in her uniform of a cashmere hoodie and joggers, was deep in a flow state, sketching out a complex new algorithm for direct air carbon capture. The door to the penthouse office hissed open. Ben Carter entered, holding a tablet and a steaming mug of tea, which he placed on her desk. "You've been in here for 12 hours, boss," he said gently. "The math will be there in the morning." "The math isn't the problem," Serafina murmured, tapping the board. "This variable is imprecise. But I'll solve it. What's the news, Ben? Distract me from this differential." Ben sighed, pulling up his notes on the tablet. "Well, the world is still on fire. The Ether 117 incident, as the press has officially dubbed it, has reached its conclusion." "Conclusion?" Serafina turned, finally. "That sounds final." "It is," Ben said, his tone serious. "Ether Airlines held an emergency board meeting this morning. James Harrison is resigning to pursue other opportunities, effective immediately." Serafina raised an eyebrow. "Resigning, with a golden parachute, the size of a small country, I assume." "The size of a medium country, actually," Ben said, with a thin smile. "But his career in aviation is over. The stockholders were furious. The PR team called it the most expensive act of managerial panic in aviation history. Grounding an entire 777 to impress you after the failure, it was a disaster. His gamble didn't pay off." "I never wanted him to do that," Serafina said, walking to the window and watching the rain. "I never wanted any of it. I just wanted a quiet flight." "I know. But he wasn't thinking about you, Sarah. He was thinking about 500 million. He saw the money, not the person. In a way, he was just as bad as Caroline. Serafina nodded, accepting the point. What about them? The Jensens. Ben swiped on his tablet. This part. It's not pretty. Jensen Manufacturing filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy 2 days ago. That $150 million acquisition and bailout package was their last hope. Without your signature, their creditors called in all their loans at once. It's done. They're being sold for scrap. He continued, and the personal fallout is just as bad. Robert Jensen's law firm, which had been courting Arthur for that massive litigation account, was embarrassed. They've terminated his partnership. He's out. He, in turn, is publicly and messily divorcing Caroline, citing the moral turpitude clause in their prenup, the same one her father-in-law used to cut her off from the family trust. So, she has nothing? Serafina asked, her voice quiet. Less than nothing. She's a social pariah, a national meme, the JFK Karen. She's been banned for life from Ether, Delta, and United, who all proactively banned her just for the good PR. The Connecticut house is in foreclosure. Last we heard, she was seen moving her Louis Vuitton luggage into a budget motel off the I-95. She's broke, she's alone, and she's infamous. Serafina was silent for a long, heavy moment. She felt no joy, no triumph, just a profound, weary sadness. She did that, boss, Ben said, sensing her mood. Not you. She built that entire house of cards herself. She just picked the wrong person to pull the last card. It's a dangerous way to see the world, Serafina said, repeating her earlier thoughts. To walk around with that much poison. She assumed I was nothing. And that assumption, that 1 second, hateful, racist assumption, just cost her everything. She took a deep breath. Okay, that's the past. What's the future? What about Ether Airlines? Ben's expression finally brightened. Ah, this is the good part. Harrison's replacement is already in place. The board just named a new interim CEO. Her name is Maria Flores. She's been with the company for 20 years. Started as a gate agent in Miami, worked her way up to head of North American operations. She's different. She's not a golden parachute guy. She's an airline woman. And she's been calling my office every hour. Begging for the deal back? No, Ben said, shaking his head. That's the interesting part. She's not. Her first call was an apology. Her second call was a 100-page file on how they failed from a logistical, security, and ethical standpoint. And her third call, she just asked, Ms. Vance is a visionary. What would she do to fix this? She's not asking for your money, Sarah. She's asking for your help. Serafina turned from the window. A small, genuine smile finally touched her lips. Okay, she said. I can work with that. Get Maria Flores on a video call. We're going to reopen the Ether negotiations, but on my terms. Ben grabbed his pen, a shark's grin spreading across his face. I love your terms. 1, Serafina said, holding up a finger. Ether Airlines will immediately create a $100 million Vance Ether Aviation Fund. It will be managed by a neutral third party, and it will provide scholarships, training, and recruitment for pilots, engineers, and executives from underrepresented communities. I want the next person who looks like me in seat 1A to own the plane. 2, she continued. The in-flight service manual is getting a rewrite. Margaret Bishop, the senior purser on Flight 117, is to be promoted to a new executive-level position, Vice President of In-Flight Experience and De-Escalation. She is going to personally design and lead the new mandatory implicit bias and conflict training For every single employee, from the CEO down. 3, Serafina said. Michael Rodriguez, the young flight attendant. He's got guts and he kept his head. I want him promoted to purser, with a commendation on his record. And when the Vance Innovations corporate account is finally, officially activated, I want him to have the option to be the permanent lead attendant on all our flagship routes. We reward competence. Period. Ben had been typing furiously. Sarah, this isn't a contract. This is a corporate reformation. She'll never agree to all of it. She will, Serafina said, with absolute certainty. She's not a James Harrison, begging for money. She's a Maria Flores, asking how to fix a broken culture. This is how we fix it. She picked up her mug of now lukewarm tea and took a sip. The world had to watch that ugly incident, Ben, she said. It's only fair that they get to watch us clean it up, too. She turned back to her whiteboard, picking up her marker. She erased the old variable and, with a few swift, elegant strokes, wrote a new one. The equation clicked into place. Good, Serafina said, to herself and to the world. Now, let's go solve clean energy. This airline drama is finally over. In the end, it was never about the seat. It was about respect. Serafina Vance didn't ask for special treatment. She just refused to accept lesser treatment. And Caroline Jensen? She learned that the people you step on your way to the top, might just be connected to the elevator that sends you straight back down. Karma, in the real world, isn't always instant. But when it's fueled by entitlement and bigotry, it often arrives with interest. The world is full of Serafinas and Carolines. The only question is, which one are you when no one is watching? Thank you for watching this story. We believe these real-life moments of justice are what make the world a fascinating and sometimes a fairer place. If you believe karma is real and that entitlement should always be checked, hit that like button so we know to make more stories like this. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that respect is free, but disrespect can cost you everything. And most importantly, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell. We have so many more stories of dramatic karma, unexpected twists, and real-life justice coming your way. You won't want to miss a single one. Until next time, treat people with respect. You never know who you're talking to.